Hey, Money Multipliers. Welcome back to another episode of the Money Multiplier Podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Kessler, and we ask ourselves, do our dollars make sense? In this episode, I am joined here by a wonderful gentleman, Mr. Kyle Gray, and I had the pleasure of interviewing Kyle. Actually, he was introduced to me through my father. He really hones the craft of you sharing your story, and this has been a common theme in my life here recently. So, I've been in the process of writing 3 books right now. Big news. All right. If this episode's launched, I don't know exactly when this is going to launch. Okay. So I'm getting with my team, but Chris Noggle and I are coming out with a foreword in a book called What Would the Rockefellers Do? And this was a book authored by Garrett Gunderson and his colleague, Michael Eisem, who are very close friends and colleagues to us here at the Money Multiplier. Known my father for a very, very long time. Like there was actually one time in the past where Garrett was speaking at the same event that my father was when Dad was kind of transitioning out of him being a chiropractor and going down and speaking at some chiropractic conventions with his chiropractic mentor back at the time. And Dad was invited to speak on the infinite banking concept, and Garrett was there also, doing the business side of IBC. And so, we've known Garrett for a long, long time. It's just been a pleasure to have this opportunity to have a foreword in his book. And then also Chris and I are coming out with a children's book. So you'll see that coming down the pipeline. And then also, I'm writing my own book and my own story. And there's been a common theme in my life here recently where it's important to be a good storyteller. Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. And that's where Kyle kind of comes in as being business owners, being entrepreneurs, sharing your story so that it hits home with the people that you are conveying your message to, so hopefully you're changing those people into clients that are in your organization or employees that are helping you out within your business. But it's important to be a very good storyteller and to share the stories that you may not want to share with people because it doesn't make you feel good. Those stories that you don't want to share, those are the ones that can really be making lifelong impactments to people. Impactments, is that a word? I don't know. I'm going to use that word. We're making up words over here. It's the Hannah Kessler Show. So enjoy today's episode. I'm going to be putting Kyle's contact down in the description box, and then also kind of check out some of the workshops that he's doing. I have the honor of coming on and doing a speaking circle with him. So you'll see me on some of his content that he's doing too. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. Well, Mr. Kyle, it's a pleasure to have you on. How are you doing, sir?
I am doing great, Hannah. Thank you so much for having me on the show today.
Yes. And I know we got connected. It's actually through my father. I know Pops was on your podcast show. And real quick, where can people find your show at? What's your show called?
It's the Story Engine Podcast, and my website is thestoryengine.co, which is also the namesake of one of my books. And it's obvious what I'm about if I repeat the same name a few times. And that's definitely what we're here to talk about today.
Yep. And I thought it would be cool to kind of bring my folks on this journey because specifically when it comes to me, I have been in this world where, I got into the family business at a very young age. I got into it when I was on the cusp of my year 17, rolling into my 18th year of my life here on this planet. And, I got into the business where Dad just called me up one day and he says, Hannah, I kind of need help in the business. And if you're not going to help me, I'll go find someone else to help me. And I was like, okay, Dad, well, what do you want me to do? I haven't really, figured out what I want to do with my life and the route that I want to go and take. And I know Pops too, I've been following him around the country since a young age and, hearing him share the message of the infinite banking concept. And it's always been his story. And I'm at this point in my life right now where it's like, okay, I've been sharing my father's story, and it's kind of a time where, Hannah, you got your own story, and there's a powerful message behind you and your story. How do we really hone that craft of you sharing your own experiences that you've developed over these working years of still being a young girl, but you got a lot of powerful information that you could be sharing with other people. And so I thought it'd be just kind of fun to go through and, if there are people out there who have been in the shadows of somebody else and they're kind of stepping into their own craft, how do people really hone their story and how do they share that message with others? And I thought it'd be kind of fun. And I guess where I kind of want to start is when folks are coming to you, where do you really start with them and their story and in telling that story and a conveying message to their audience?
Absolutely. There's some really exciting angles that we have on this conversation. And the problem that you expressed of, I've been telling my father's story for a long time, is there's something much more universal about this than I imagine you expect right now.
Mhm.
We're all very happy to tell somebody else's story in a lot of ways, and there's a certain challenge in recognizing and owning our own stories, whether we're in a family business, whether we're started our own, whether we have a big team, or whether we're working by ourselves. And there's a common thread that I've seen that impacts and prevents most of the most brilliant people I've met in the world from being successful speaking and storytelling. And it's not because they can get great results for their clients, and
Mhm.
that's awesome. There's no doubt about that. But what makes you a good deliverer for your clients, or what makes you be successful in that way, is not necessarily the same thing that's going to get results and move people from the stage or from a podcast. And I want to share a brief story of what happened to me being a
Yeah,
guest on another podcast last week that will really illustrate there's this a subtle problem that's happening here that even I experience myself.
yeah.
So I was on another podcast last week, and the host asked me first about a client that I've worked with before and gotten good results. And I immediately was like, "Oh, David A. Perez. He is a master at helping people with six-figure tax burdens bring their taxes down. He does webinars every week, and I was able to help him get from 14% conversions to 30% conversions with a few simple story changes." And I'm like, ha ha ha, so cool. Great. Right. But he asked me then afterwards, who have been some people that have mentored you and helped you? And I was able to list off so many people. It almost brought a tear to my eye. It really deeply moved me. And then he hit me with another question that I wasn't expecting to be as challenging as it was. And he said, "Who did you do this for? How did you serve somebody in this same way?" And it was much more difficult to find the answer.
Hmm.
And I remember one of the things that I do well is I'm able to observe myself and my feelings and my responses to things. And I started saying, why do I feel so uncomfortable with this question? When you asked me a question about a client I had a little while ago, and I was able to just fire it off right away. And it's because that question served my professional persona,
Mhm.
which is we all have our professional personas, especially marketers. And
Mhm.
it's always like everything's cool, I'm awesome, I'm the best. Um, And when it came to sharing about somebody that I had mentored or delivered that gift to, it was challenging because it showed who I was, not what I've done.
Mhm.
And I believe that 99.992 exactly percent of entrepreneurs have some sort of addiction to achievement.
Yeah.
And this is what in the early days is incredibly valuable and incredibly useful and drives a lot of the success that we have. But there's a certain point where it no longer serves us, but it becomes counterproductive when we start over gripping on our business. A lot of times this will result in us stepping on the toes of our team members or not doing the work that is our most genius work. And instead we end up managing the day-to-day things to keep ourselves busy and to feel important and to feel like we're doing things.
Yeah. Kyle, I call this staying in your lane. We have that saying in the business. You got to stay in your lane.
Yeah. And your lane, almost certainly, if you're listening to this, if you're an entrepreneur, is to be in the darkness and the uncertainty and to be at your growth edge, expanding yourself, sharing your vision, and making an impact. And a lot of the times, because of our addiction to achievement, this is very scary place to be in. And so we end up leaving our lane to do the things that we're pretty good at. Yeah. And a lot of the times we hire people and they're like, oh man, these people couldn't do my social media as well. And we start badgering our team members. Our team members feel disempowered and everybody's worse off instead of the person seeing like, I have a divine responsibility and gift to share myself and to share this message. And I need to get it out there. Mm-hmm. This also impacts how we teach or what we teach. A lot of the times, and if you've been following your father all over the country, you've probably seen a lot of speakers. Mm-hmm. And a lot of speakers, many more speakers will go long in their talks than will go short. Mm-hmm. And I've worked with a lot of experts in many different fields, and they love to talk about the facts and the statistics. And they love to talk about everything that you need to do to get the results that they promise. This is usually what they lead with. And this is the same leaning into the achievement mindset. Mm-hmm. And in the same way, and you've illustrated this yourself, it's difficult for us to say, okay, well, I want to share this story or I want to tell this story about myself because, first of all, we have a hard time identifying the right stories because all of us, we have somewhat of an inappropriate relationship to ourselves. We are telling ourselves stories about our past, and the stories that would be the most powerful for us to share might not even occur to us because we'd be like, oh, that's kind of an icky thing. I don't want to share that weakness. I want to come across as a badass. Yeah. And this is the interesting dance that happens. And as I have spent now 6 or 7 years working with some of the greatest minds in the country and in the world on this, I'm seeing more and more how writing a truly great talk is a transformative and healing process. It allows us to love ourselves, to clarify our vision, to get into that lane that we really should be in the most powerful way possible. Yeah. And it's an act of love first. And then the bonus is all of the amazing things that come as a result, the increased conversions, increased sales, getting invited to speak more. All of those things are awesome. And it's certainly what I promise in my own addiction achievement to everybody that I talk to. But what brings the biggest smile to my face is how people change, how they relate to themselves, their work, their vision, their legacy, and the changes in their lives that come from that.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't want to share those stories. I actually have a mentor. Actually, my listeners don't even know this yet. But just last week, I was in New York City. I had the opportunity to go speak on the NASDAQ stage and the New York Bar Association and the New York Academy of Medicine. I actually had a Jumbotron image up in Times Square, promoting the infinite banking concept, my business, taking back control of your money, which is huge accomplishment. And this was something that was different because when I go and I travel around the country and I talk live, or maybe I'm doing a podcast or a webinar live, I share the message of the infinite banking concept, how my family got into this back in '08, and what it has really done for the Kessler family, being our own bankers. And this was my first time that I ever went out there and I did a talk that was not really IBC, the infinite banking concept. It was Hannah, sharing a story that my mentor actually asked me. He says, Hannah, what is the story that you don't want to tell? What is that one thing that you're like, ew, it just makes you feel icky and gross? And that is the story that you want to share with people. And there was a time that I struggled with addiction when it comes to drugs and alcohol when I was growing up and being a party girl back in the day. And I was like, Clint, this is a story that I don't want to share. And he goes, bingo, that's the one that you need to share from stage. And let me tell you, it was powerful. People are coming up to me and saying, Hannah, I want you to share this with some of the people in my life that are struggling with these same things. And then tying it back to, you become the average of the top 5 people that you hang around with. And there's lessons within those down times in your life that you're like, I really don't want to share this, but there's a lot of value that you can bring from sharing those gross stories that you don't want anybody to know about you, but people connect with you in that way. They love that authentic self of you.
They connect with you and you connect with you in this way. When you start sharing these stories, it changes how you relate to yourself. And up until that moment, it was something you didn't want to share. And it was in some ways like carrying an extra rock in your backpack of life. And it transformed that moment from something of shame and it infused it with purpose and a duty and a responsibility.
Yeah.
And that's the real beauty here, but it takes courage. And it's necessary, especially in something like money. We all have many opinions and ideas about what money is and does and should be.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example of health that will parallel elucidate this. Let's say I was a weight loss coach and I taught people the keto diet to lose weight. If I was like this, fancy ripped guy, and then I started talking about all the things that you needed to do, throw out the gluten or throw out the crackers, throw out the bread, no more rice, we're eating meat all day long. Nobody, and they see me like this. First of all, they're like, man, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of things to do. Then they see, Kyle, he's a pretty badass guy. And sure, he's successful. Look at how he is now. But could that work for me? I don't really think so.
Yeah.
And and that's that might have been even like the difference between you and your father, Brent. He presents himself really well put together, money master guy. But like, so let's imagine I'm talking about how good the keto diet is. Well, if somebody's listening to me and they're interested in this, I'm not the first person that they've heard about the keto diet, and you're not the first person that somebody's heard of infinite banking, or at least the concept of having a true control and autonomy over your financial future.
Yeah.
And whether it's weight or money or health or money, everybody that's coming to the stage or that's coming to listen to you has a series of beliefs about why this won't work for them.
Yes.
And as speakers, because we're addicted to achievement, we talk about all of the things that we do and the details of our program and all of our certifications, and we'll just blast people with that. But no amount of that kind of information is sufficient. If you can say all of that you want, but if you don't address the underlying belief structures, it's going to go in one ear and out the other.
Yep. Yep.
When instead, when we can have this empathy and have this understanding and trust ourselves and our story, then we can start to talk about what things are like when these things are in place. What are the benefits? How can we describe the what we get once we have the infinite banking in place, or once I'm on the keto diet, you're going to find that you have more energy. You're going to feel better throughout your day. And the foods that you used to enjoy, you might not even like anymore because you were just trying to get a little sugar rush to get you through that 2 p.m. crash
Yep.
instead. And now you're fueling yourself. You're not going to want to go back once things are working. And this is a very profound shift. And even having the story that you said, it allows us to relate to you. Because
Mhm.
I was also a partier in my college days and had a very good time with that. And now I could see, wow, Hannah has gone through a lot of the same things that I have. And because of that, I want to I can trust that I can be successful with this too.
Yeah.
And that's really what we want to be inspiring in people. We don't need them to know how to set up their own things or all of the technical details of what that will all work. That is all important, but it has its time and its place, and it's not right here.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can open people up to those possibilities, that's what gets them leaning in and wanting to create with us. And that's what creates the results we're looking for.
Yeah, yeah. And so where do you see people starting with all of this? Because I imagine you're working with folks that, are they all entrepreneurs? Are they business owners? Are some of them just W-2 people? Where are people really starting with this?
Yeah. Most of the people that I work with are business owners. They're usually the leader of their company or their primary visionary. Sometimes they are the speaker or the face of the company who is in charge of sharing the message and the vision and attracting people. And where do we start with this? I have a very different perspective than almost any other speaking coach, which I think I've elucidated in a lot of ways already. But where do we start? And we always start with our client, not ourselves. And this is one of the biggest shifts is even though we're telling our own stories have nothing to do with ourselves or the reason that I'm speaking today and I'm talking about my things. It has nothing to do with me. And when you shared the story about being a party girl, it really didn't have anything to do with you. It has to do with our listener.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can be courageous in understanding what problems do they have? And I have in my events or in my coaching programs, I have a really interesting closed eye process. And I'll give you everybody a brief experience of this so you can have a little bit of this. We'll see if we can find a story even through this,
Yeah.
an interesting reverse psychology process. So if you're listening to this and not driving a vehicle or doing anything that is important, just go ahead and close your eyes for a bit and picture that ideal client, that person that you want to serve and you want to help. Sometimes it's a real person that you've had, and sometimes you may have to kind of come up with an archetype.
Yeah.
But once you have a good picture of them, think about the problem that they have that you solve. And once we have a good picture of that, then we move towards seeing this client in a coffee shop and they're talking to their friend about this problem.
Mm-hmm.
This is before they've met you. And what language are they using to talk about the problem? It's not your language as the expert,
Yeah.
which I'm sure you have some brilliant things to say, but they haven't met you yet. And so we're not going to hear anything about infinite banking. They might not even know that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is a very good place to think the coffee shop conversation. And this is where most people stop. But there's a deeper conversation here. And I want you to imagine that your ideal client has called you, and now it's 3 in the morning, and you're sitting next to them in their bed, and they're telling you their darkest secrets. Some of the things that they've probably not even admitted to themselves before.
Mm-hmm.
What are they talking about? What are they thinking about? How does this occur to them and for them? These are some intense thoughts and some intense places to go. And it is our responsibility as leaders to go there. And once we're here, you should start thinking to yourself or checking, where does this happen in my body? What am I feeling in my own body right now because of these words that this client is saying? A lot of the times I'll make people say these words out loud. It's reverse psychology is like a psychologist or a therapist tries to help you get away from these moments, or not necessarily get away, but like re-relate to them. And I want to bring you into the darkness there. And so we want to see, like, where I feel this in my sternum. Maybe I feel it in my stomach. It's very heavy. It's sharp. It's hot. Whatever the case may be, I hear all kinds of things. But once we're really immersed in it and captured by the feeling, the next question I ask is, when did you feel like this? And through this process, it allows us to short circuit and get around all of our judgments about ourselves, all of our things about what we think is important to tell in a story and why we want to tell. And by going through our client's experience, we're not so busy judging ourselves. We're thinking about who we want to serve. And that will allow us to find those stories that we wouldn't normally find. And this helps us transform a person, an entrepreneur or a leader, from saying, I have too many stories. I don't know what I would do or what I would share, or I don't have any stories. I'm a boring person, to I have a story and a purpose and a message. And the best of all is that this can be used many, many times over. This isn't just used to tell one story, but anytime you have a problem that you want to speak to, you can use this same process to discover stories in your own life. And almost everybody I work with, it's like they're sitting on a treasure chest of ideas, of moments, of opportunities. But this treasure chest has poop written on it on the front. And so we think that we're like poor and we don't have anything. And if we can just relate to this differently and see what's inside, we're going to find that we're so much farther along than we expect.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's deep. It's deep thoughts that people don't want to go there. And then they start to procrastinate even going there. Then they get comfortable with their conventional thinking and the stories that they have been saying all these years. Because I'll tell you, it does get uncomfortable. I had the opportunity to go speak at one of the insurance companies' stages, and it's different, especially too when you're talking to the different audiences. Speaking to prospects versus speaking to your peers is just like a whole other game in all of it itself. But you get comfortable with that same idea and story that you're saying over and over again to your prospects, that to expand and evolve, you got to hone into those other stories that you have inside of you.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and it relates to our not just how we open up our talks, but how we strategize everything we do, how we teach, how we set up our offer, what we want to do. I had another client who's a part of my mastermind. I was amazed at what she said. She's a breathwork instructor and was showing me slides for her presentation. And there was one point in her presentation, she had this beautiful picture of the nervous system. And she was like, I show people this because I get a little nervous that I'm not a doctor. And so I want to prove to people that I'm sciencey and smart. And my jaw dropped when she said this to me, because it was just like, so many we make this choice all of the time, and it just is so outrageous sometimes when we're really confronted with it. And with a simple perspective shift, she has also hired and brought in some of the best doctors in the world who are really experienced in this to speak in her program and in her master classes to back it up. And we changed her this in one slide. There was this story of, I'm not enough. And so I'm not a doctor. I'm going to prove my scienciness to you, to be like, and now she's like, I'm not a doctor. And so I got one.
Yep.
Which is so much more powerful. and
Yeah.
she can own that in a new way. And this is like there, when we can change this relationship to ourselves and to through our clients, this is when magic happens. And the best part about this is we have a lot more fun sharing our stories. We have a lot more fun sharing who we are, and we get a lot better results in the process. And our listeners even enjoy it as well.
Yeah, yeah. And so now where are folks you know, so we're honing in, we're going in internally to ourselves to find and identify these powerful stories, and then where are folks taking it from here? I mean, are they you know, are people going out and doing different talks each and every time that they're getting up on stage or doing podcasts? You know, is there like a time and place where, oh, this story is good for this crowd of people, this one may be good for this crowd of people, and then are they constantly updating this? You know, where are people really going after they've identified different, you know, experiences within their life that they can share with their community?
Hannah, this is an amazing question. It's not an often asked question, and there is a beauty in this. So a lot of the times when I work with people, we build one signature talk, and this in the same way, this one signature talk, it's not the end result that we're going through, and it's not what the biggest value that I provide is. It's a starting point. In the same, this signature talk is like a yoga practice in the same sense that you get up every day and you do the same yoga practice, or I like to liken it like a martial arts kata. When you imagine a martial artist practicing, they go, yeah, and they have these same movement patterns. They're wax on, wax off, practicing, practicing, practicing their talk. And so that when they're in the real world, they block the punch with the wax on, wax off, and they're not even thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's not about any one of the stories. It's not about any one of your teaching points. It's about understanding the core frameworks that make up a story, that
Mm,
make up a great teaching. It's about understanding how to listen and be present to somebody. It changes our orientation from constantly thinking about what do I say next to this person to actually being present and listening and thinking, what does this person need and how can I serve them?
yeah.
It changes it from how do I cram as much information as possible into these next 10 minutes to prove to them that I'm a genius to what's one thing that I could teach that would really move them forward
Yes.
in this.
Yeah.
And when we start to understand the frameworks that make this up, then we are able to improvise and know which story is the most correct. It makes it so we're no longer battling the blank page, but we are able to be present and listen and there with our audiences. So
Mhm.
it's the one talk allows us to consistently change and adapt and be there with our audience as things change. So it makes it a lot easier to be creative, to be in the flow, and to be what I think most people that I work with they want to do and end up doing, which is winging it.
Mhm.
And if you don't understand these principles and you try and wing it, then you're going to get lost in all kinds of tangents and you're going to speak for 15% longer than the time that's been allotted to you.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you understand these principles, then you're going to finish 5 minutes early and you're going to have a line of people ready to come work with you.
Yes, because sometimes I do. I I do call myself the professional winger sometimes.
Everybody does because we don't have time because we're busy and we're busy doing all these other things in our business. And it feels ludicrous to sit in front of a blank screen and start typing our stories or thinking about these things because there's like constant fires that need to be put out. And that's one of the reasons why people pay me is because it just forces them to slow down and stop for a second because they couldn't do it in and of themselves.
Yes.
But with the purpose of I understand the purpose of stories. I understand my purpose and my story. That's what gives us the fortitude and the quietude to sit down and say, I have something important to say, and I'm going to sit here until it comes forward. And
Yeah.
this is something challenging for me to do too. But I'll tell you, one of the best posts I've written for Facebook and one of the most like shifting ideas happened when I did this for myself a few weeks back and just sat in a park and let myself journal in the morning instead of thinking I need to be doing the 15 outreaches and achieving all these things and checking my email and responding to all the emails. Slowed down
Hmm.
and I let the things come. And it brings us back to this is a process of loving ourselves through loving our client and serving our client.
Yeah. Yeah. And now what about this? What are your thoughts on going through like a real time, like I don't know, let's call it a case study where take me for instance, so I
Yeah.
got a story of, that I share all the time with my family where I get into, who am I, before I even get into all the details of IBC, I always say, hey, I want to share my family's background of how we got here because we were not in this world whatsoever, with my father being a chiropractor, and that was my first ever job when I was 14 years old, was being the front desk CA at one of dad's chiropractic clinics, and then going in and sharing his story of how we had almost $1 million of debt, and then by implementing this concept we were able to pay it off in 39 months. And again, it's dad's story, it's not Hannah Kessler's story, it's the Brent Kessler story. And so if we take me, for instance, like where do we go in and really start changing the topic and the talk of how I'm conveying this message of, hey, where did you begin in all of this?
Perfect. Well, let's talk about the pain that the clients that you serve are feeling that don't know about infinite banking. And I'm not too far from this myself. So what are we going through? There's $1 million in debt. There's not enough money. I have to work hard to make the not enough money that I make. What
Yeah.
else is going on? What else are the problems of the people that you work with and you serve?
Yeah, I would think it's the struggle with trading your time for money. People are sick and tired of
I'm
trading
tired. Yeah.
money. I
Hmm.
think they're tired of leaving it up to the government and the market to dictate whether my money's going to go up or go down. So it's the control of your money, or leaving it to a financial advisor who thinks they can manage our money better than what we can just because of lack of knowledge. So I would say
Yeah.
it has to do with the outside external forces and then just the lack of knowledge to not even knowing where to start, because I've been fed all of this information up to this point that, hey, well, I thought I was doing something good, work all of these hours, work or get a good college degree, and then go out, find a good job, let the government take care of me. But it just hasn't been working out for people that they see in
Mm,
their demographic or maybe older than them. And I think that's the struggle that
juicy.
people are finding.
Absolutely. Will you tell me about a time when you were working in your father's chiropractic office and you could see the pain that we've just been describing on his face, and how did it hurt you?
Yeah. I think what it is, I actually just off the top of my head, Pops was so ingrained into working that, it hurt me that sometimes he wasn't there attending my volleyball games or maybe showing up for dinner every single night because he was just so sucked into the office and building the business.
Yeah. Can you give me a specific volleyball game, the championship game, or a special dinner that he said he was going to be there but wasn't? A Tuesday afternoon that this was a real crisp moment. Tell me about a singular moment.
Yeah, I remember there was nationals one year. So we went to nationals because I was playing club ball back then, and it was in Denver, Colorado. And Pops was going to go with me to that tournament and travel with me. But last minute, he couldn't make it because of some obligations within the office. I want to say I was, oh, how old was I?
Before, how did he tell you? Did he text you? Did he say it to you? How did he say I'm not coming?
I think it was just one night when, because this might be embarrassing, but I'm going to say it anyways. One of
Okay.
my most favorite memories of growing up is that even since I was, I don't know, maybe like a junior in high school, Dad would always tuck me into bed every single night. And that was my
Oh,
favorite thing ever. And he'd come and give me a kiss and tuck me into bed. It
this
is
is
one of
amazing.
those nights I remember.
He was tucking you in and he said, "Ah, Hannah, I can't make it."
Yep. Yep.
That's amazing. This is so good. Okay. And then you went on and you had the volleyball tournament and he wasn't there.
And he wasn't there.
Hmm. And then somewhere along this line, you got it in your head that you need to work really hard for all of your money, right? And you probably didn't feel good enough about yourself because where the hell's dad?
Yeah.
Is there something wrong with me?
Yeah.
Maybe I should have a drink of alcohol.
Or go
Hmm.
get that happiness elsewhere.
Yeah, or go get that happiness elsewhere.
Mhm.
Again. And I don't, I'm not implying that you were 14 and started drinking or anything, but you mentioned this earlier, and we're connecting some dots here that are fascinating.
Yeah. And it
So,
was, no, and I'll be real, it was during those times, the people in my age demographic, they go out and they start experimenting with the alcohol, the drugs, the marijuana, tobacco. I would say probably when they start becoming a senior in high school into that freshman year of their college. Well, I started
mhm.
doing it when I was 14 years old, a
Oh,
freshman
we
in
did.
high school.
Awesome. And not awesome. I don't condone this, but it is awesome that you are telling me this. And it is awesome because we are building a story right now. And I am delighting in this experience. Okay. We have enough ingredients for the open. Now we need the opposite. Tell me about a time you have successfully implemented, or your father has successfully implemented infinite banking and has paid off his debts, had created more time and more space. When did he show up for you?
I would say it was during the time that I was going out and looking at schools to go to college for, because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with my life. I knew that, some of my passions were, I was very into math and money. And so I thought about, okay, well, Hannah, do you want to go be maybe a CPA? But then really my heart was lying within fashion design. And so there, I remember where dad was taking me around to these different schools to maybe go and pursue that fashion design career and dream.
Hmm. Awesome. Do you remember something he said to you specifically in that time? Any kind of quotes or a singular experience like the bedside we've already explored?
Not anything right now that's coming to my mind of things that he said to me, but I remember the times that we would sit down and look at the different schools and we would go and tour them together. And it was probably my junior year of high school walking into my senior year.
Mm. Hmm. Okay. All right. Are you ready to hear your own story?
Tell me.
One of my favorite things ever is having my father come tuck me in. We had a little check-in every evening and even into high school. It was something that I looked forward to. My father was a chiropractor at this time, and while he was working really, really hard, things didn't seem to be going quite as well as he would have hoped.
Mhm.
And while I was Um, he started showing up less and less to tuck me in at night because he was working late. And he started showing up less and less to the things. And I didn't know why. I didn't know at the time that he was getting millions of dollars in debt, or 100,000 or whatever the number was. I didn't know that he was racking up debt or what that would have impacted. All I saw was that my father, who I loved so much, was around for me less present when he was around. And I could see the impact that it was having on himself with my mother and beyond. And
Yeah.
it really hit me hard. One of the now rare occasions when he was tucking me in, and I was so looking forward to him coming out to my volleyball championship that was happening in a few days. And he said, Hannah, I know I promised you this, but I can't make it because I've got to work. And I remember seeing just the lights in the room. I look up towards my spackled ceiling because I couldn't bear to look him in the eyes anymore. And I start to wonder if there's something wrong with me. Is it my fault? Am I not enough for him? And this process would slowly eat away at me for a long time and would change the course of my life. This pain, which I had grown so used to holding on my own and in silence, I wanted to find a way to medicate and change that. Would take a little drink here, maybe two, have a little smoke here, go out and stay out late, even as a freshman or a sophomore. And all of a sudden, the volleyball skills and careers that I had started not working as well. I started doing not as well in school, and this distanced me from my father all the more. And really, what I just wanted was his same attention and love. I wanted him to be there for me. And I could see the weight of this impacting him more and more and more and causing more distance between us.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so grateful because I wasn't able to, that he decided to make a change. One of the biggest changes of both of our lives. And over the course of many years and a lot of costly and painful mistakes, we started crafting the solution together. I remember seeing how my father started working with infinite banking, this concept that made no sense to me at the time. But he started showing me how there was a way that we could take control of our money and how we used it and where we used it and how we protected it. And it wasn't just a way to control our money, but it was a way to navigate our lives with more possibility, with more opportunity. And over time, as my father moved away from working hard, working more, and all of the classic ideas that seem to be peddled and shoved down our throats at every angle, I started seeing him make more space for himself and make more space for me, which allowed me to start to take better care of myself and start to see how the destruction that I was creating in my own life because I was desperately hoping for love from my father was hurting the both of us. And a few years down the line, as the debts started being paid, as our own banking started to grow, I remember him walking along with me, picking out different colleges, picking out different possibilities. And though I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, I knew that he was there for me and present and supportive. And I didn't know what the path forward was, but I knew that there was a path and that I could connect with him and that I was enough. And I was so amazed seeing that the transformation that we had gone through and how we related to our money and our work and our lives transformed, which helped us relate to each other better. Now, this wasn't something I did on my own, but I'm here today to tell you, for the sake of your sons and your daughters and your family that are feeling the same pain of you working harder, of you trying more, of you not being in control of your financial destiny, there is a change possible. There is a future possible. And in the next 45 minutes, I'm going to show you how you can take control of that future in a way that you never imagined.
Mm. Yeah.
And now you're going to outsell your father. Sorry, Brent.
No, but you're right though. You're right. And it is gonna hit a chord with a lot of people because they have those same exact experiences, no matter if it is, with their
It's
father
gonna
or their
it's so much more because there's gonna be more people like Brent who through your story of seeing from your point of view the pain and destruction that is caused by overworking and by these lies that have been peddled to us for so long. You have a responsibility to share that, and your story and your moments really is equally powerful, if not more powerful, to everybody who could be clients of yours. Because of that, everybody who signs up wants this not so I can have more money, but so that I can be more present with my family. And if they want anything else, then what the hell are you doing here anyway? I have no idea who you are. And so, and this, what you're feeling right now, this essence is like, this changes how we relate to ourselves. This is where the healing process is. And this is what creates that energy to go out and get our message out there and make an impact and become who we really are.
Mm-hmm. And too, because there's so many different angles that you can hit at it, and because then it just gets me into my mindset of thinking, well, then mama and her story of going through this time and the fights and staying up late at night, and then even my brother and his perspective, and then I want to ask like how. So because there's so many things you can keep going in here and updating these stories as time goes on, and the different stories that are within that story. And so, are people like your students who you're working with, are they going in like on a quarterly or a semi-annual basis? And are they going in and updating these different stories until they find one that hits with that specific audience? Or do they have like a Rolodex of, okay, I think this is going to be the one that really caters to this group of people? And are they always going in there and updating that craft? Because it's going to be an ongoing changing thing as they go through and have more life experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with both our life experiences and what we teach. And the key essence is always, how is this working with our audience? We always want to use our audience and our clients because it's who we want to serve and it's who we're really here for.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example of this adaptation. Over the course of 6 months, I had his name's Reed, who runs the Functional Diagnostic Nutritionist. It's a health certification program, and he worked with me over the course of 6 months because he was doing a big speaking tour. The first 2 months he was speaking to acupuncturists, clinicians, and chiropractors. And we know a lot about those here. And they have a certain way of describing the success that they want for themselves and their clients and the problems that they have. Right? Makes sense. After this, the next 2 months, he was speaking to CrossFit gym owners. His program works equally well for CrossFit gym owners, but they describe the success that they want for themselves and their clients differently. Did we need to start over and start a whole new talk? No, we were just able, because we understood the process and these systems that underlie the stories that we're sharing, that we could pluck out a few stories from the clinicians and place in a few CrossFit gym owners. We replaced some of the specific words in his origin story that would describe the pain of being in a clinic, and instead went to what it would be like in a gym. And it was his same truth, but it was oriented to land in service of the different audiences.
Yep.
And on the final third month, or the final 2 months, he was speaking to biohackers and people who ran biohacking clinics. And they are different than the normal acupuncturists and clinicians, and they are different than the CrossFit gym owners. But we didn't have to start a bunch of things over. Instead, we just changed it out like tiny little Lego pieces over time. And every time he would speak, I would watch the recording and I would give him a breakdown of like, at 3 minutes and 57 seconds, you went way too long here. At 8 minutes and 52 seconds, this was amazing. I've never heard you say this before. And the way the audience responded was huge. We need to double down on that.
Mhm.
And so we were continuously iterating and developing and expanding on the results. And this is like why, bringing it back to, it's a yoga practice, it's a martial art. We're
Yeah.
constantly uh, using it to develop and reflect. And it just takes an understanding of the fundamental principles that underlie these stories. And it is my honor and blessing that I get to share these and share the impact and the meaning of all of these with some of the people that are making this world better.
Mhm. There's always room for improvement there. And I want to tell you this or ask you this, like my mentor, he's talking to me about, what really creates a good story. And it's what your thoughts are, what you're feeling, who it is that you're talking about. Do you have a criteria or almost like I don't want to use the word blueprint, but that's the word that's coming to my mind, of a blueprint of what makes a good story a good story? Is there like a guideline that folks are following? Because I think it was beautiful that you took me down that journey of, let me ask you these sets of questions. But now, since we have the answers to all of these questions, how are we framing it into this good story? Do you kind of have like a blueprint?
I do have a blueprint. I hope this is okay. I have a mini course
Yeah.
of 45 minutes of videos. It's at thestoryengine.co/perfect, and it's how to create a 5-minute authority story. And it walks through the process that I just did without really explaining what was going on or why. But there are principles that underlie each of these things that you can walk through and start to learn how to craft stories like the one I just told with people. So there are frameworks, and I also, this is the frameworks and the systems and the checklists are how I build talks with people. I have a document that's just line by line, story by story, what makes a great high converting signature talk that I work with people through to co-create. And I do a lot of what I just did because like we said earlier, we're busy and we don't have a lot of time. And the first step for people that really gets them out the door and gets them having results is if I can just apply the frameworks to your story quickly and give you something that you can use and work. You can listen to this recording and you can start sharing this on stage right away and feel a difference. And when you feel a difference and you see how your audience is responding differently, then you're more willing and excited to listen to me when I start to teach you about the things that are actually happening and the specific details. But I want you to experience yourself first before I get into the nitty-gritty teaching. And that's then, once we get into that teaching and that frameworks and you start to understand that, then you become able to do what I just did for you for yourself.
Yep, yep. And Kyle, if it's okay with your permission, I'm gonna put that link down in the show notes. Is that okay?
I would be honored. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So I want my community to go and explore this because I think it is important. And especially, life in general, people don't care about the facts. People don't care that I'm telling y'all that, oh, my family was in $1 million of debt, or all of this other facts that come around our story. They want to know what that story is because that's going to resonate and hit home with a lot of people. And especially when it comes to your marketing, that's what they're wanting. They want the authentic story of what brought you here and why is it so impactful and why should I be listening. And that's why I want people to really tune into your stuff and what you're preaching.
Well, and just in the context of preaching, and one of the things that I feel is really important right now, I believe that as the human race, right now we are faced with the most complicated challenges that we have ever faced as a society, as a civilization.
Hmm.
We are in a crucial time right now. And I also believe that we have all of the human capacity, and I use the word human very directly there, to solve these problems. But right now, there are Einsteins, there are Malalas, there are all of these genius, brilliant people that are not accessing this, that are not standing up. And we need as many people as possible sharing who they are and why to wake people up so that we can, I believe, in a bright and powerful future, not just for us individually, not just for our families, but for the whole world of wealth and abundance. And it means you, listener, need to be sharing your gifts and sharing who you are, because there are people out there that are hurting. There are sad. There are daughters that are wondering if they're good enough for their fathers in the same way that you just described. And it's because you're not sharing your story with enough courage. And when you can see it this way, sharing who we are goes from feeling like, oh, am I just talking about myself? Gross, to I need to do this. I'm here for this.
Yes. Yes. Kyle, now is there something that I'm not asking you that you want to share with the community?
I am so grateful for this experience. I am so grateful for you. I've really appreciated this. I don't think I have anything other than I usually like to close on that and that divine responsibility. But I want to commend you and your courage and your openness to examine your own stories, to be embarrassed and to be vulnerable on this show. And I just think that it's a beautiful success story for Brent to have you along on this and what he has created. And I want to honor what you've all built from this. And this podcast and you being you and everything that's gone into this is a sign of what infinite banking can do and what is possible. And anybody listening, if you're on the fence, join in right now. You've inspired me by showing me who you are and playing full out today. And I want to thank you for that process. And I want to thank Brent for his tremendous courage to stay strong and to change course, even in those darkest, most challenging times, and for what he's created because of that.
Yes. No, thank you, Kyle. And actually, I don't know exactly when this episode's going to air quite yet, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this launch, and right after it, my next week's episode is I think I'm going to be posting out my talk that I did on the NASDAQ stage, and right in front of, I met Rudy Giuliani this past week, and I had the pleasure to interview him and share my story with him and just different stages that are big. And I think I'm going to really be sharing that here in the near future. So my listeners, I'm excited to be posting that out, because that is something that it was hard. It was very hard and difficult at first, but then you do it over and over and over again. You're like, wow, people really resonate with this, and this is very powerful. You want to keep it all bottled up inside because you don't want people to see that side of you, because you're always putting on this persona in the work world, and you want people to view you up on that pedestal. But when you really connect with people on that same playing field, that I'm not better than you, you're not better than me, we all have a special gift to share. And when you really come to terms with that, it's powerful, whether it be your personal life, your business life, and connecting with individuals one-on-one. So Kyle, thank you. Thanks for just being here and enlightening us.
Hannah, it's been my honor and my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me here today.
So, in Money Multipliers, we will be back next week for another episode too. I'm here every single Tuesday. So, comment down below, subscribe, rate the podcast, view it on YouTube as well. If you are listening to this on the podcasting platforms, you can see my beautiful face along with Kyle and get to know us a little bit more. But reach out to me too if you got any questions. Send me an email. Hannah spelled the same ways, forwards and backwards. Hannah@themoneymultiplier.com. So I see y'all. I'm proud of you. And until next week, I'll catch everybody then. Bye, y'all.